Good morning, everybody. I just got in last night at like midnight because there was a French rail strike yesterday and the day before, and usually whenever you go there, it was fun. I spent the whole day hopping trains all over France. I got here at like midnight, and a restaurant right down the street, I think it's called Stendhal's, amazing, handmade food. And then I was walking back to my hotel, which is 3 blocks away, and they have the bike sharing programs everywhere in the world now, but I haven't actually tried one. I just moved from Minneapolis to San Francisco. I was in Dublin last week, Paris. So I was walking by it at 1 in the morning, and I thought, I wonder if I can like rent a bike with my mobile phone, and I did, and I rode my bike around to like 2:30 in the morning. So if I'm a little sleepy today, but it was a lot of fun before it started raining. Anyway, my name's Robert Stevens. Well, the great thing about being founder is it's the one title no one can ever take away from you. If you get fired from a company you start, they can't ever not call you the founder. So they asked me to come talk to you today, which is cool because they didn't know what I was going to talk about. And frankly, till 3 this morning, I didn't know what I was going to talk about. I give my talks away, I run my company, I make this shit up as I go along, so I hope you enjoy. I thought, well, what the hell am I going to tell you? I'm probably like the worst person to speak to you because I never borrowed any money. I never did a business plan. I'm a 2-time college dropout. I don't really know what I'm doing. But thank you for having me here. Yes, and I'm not bothered at all that my tweets in real time will appear on both sides of the screen behind me. I'm not nervous at all. Okay, so there's a number of things I want to talk to you about. So these slides are more to remind me what to talk about. First of all, you need to use shorter hashtags, all right? All right. So that's my business card. Okay? No, really, that's all that's on my business card now. Who needs a fax number anymore? If you see a fax number on a business card, that's like a bad sign. Don't take money from them. Okay? What is a fax? And an address. Or even a phone number. And who really wants more email? Are all your inboxes just empty and nothing to do? I use Twitter for everything. And if people don't know what this is, if you type that into Google, you actually get all my other information. Somebody just told me, and I'm going to do this, I'm going to put on my voicemail now. Do you know what voicemail is? Is that still a thing young people do or know what it is? One day, you won't. So now the new thing is to leave on your outgoing voicemail message just what your email address is, which I love. I'm going to do that like as soon as I get back to my hotel. So this is a company I started. This is the second company I started. When I was 10, I had a tree house, and I ran a detective agency out of it called The Finders Keep, but that's another story. This is the second startup. I'm a serial entrepreneur. This one I started 18 years ago, and I just left, okay? Which I think I have a lot more common with Italian culture, and I'll get to that in a little bit. So what is the Geek Squad? For those of you that don't know, I grew up in Chicago, but I started this about 18 years ago when I was in college. I was making extra money. I was like most college people, poor and hungry. And that is the 2 ingredients that help when you're a startup. Because you get really creative when your stomach is empty. And I needed to make extra money. And so I was always good at fixing stuff. And remember, about 20 years ago when the web first came around and computers, everybody was selling computers. Nobody wanted to make house calls. That's the messy business. I'm not really even in the technology business. That's another reason why I'm the last speaker that should be speaking right now. I'm in the hospitality. I'm in the hospitality business. I have more to do with a restaurant or a hotel. Because I show up and I fix your stuff and I make you happy and then I leave. But I don't really sell computers. And I didn't want to get into this business. So I gave it a name that would let me get into another business later without having to change the logo and the letterhead. Because I'm also cheap. Remember, I was poor. And that's kind of one of the talks I have for you today. And anyway, so Geek Squad now is the world's largest technology support company. It started with just me and a bicycle, but now there are 25,000 Geek Squad agents around the world. In China, Mexico, France, Sweden, the UK. And what we do is we started doing computer support. But what is a computer now? I mean, we also can hang your flat screen TVs. We do a lot of tech support, like when they have AV problems. stuff like that. And now, thermostats, your car, Bluetooth headsets, all those things. Because most of you are not reading the manuals. And stuff is getting more and more connected. Very soon, even light bulbs will have Wi-Fi connections. And you'll be able to control when they go on and off. And we're the ones that you call when they don't. And so that business will really work anywhere. In fact, will the computer be around in 5 years? Will it be tablets? I don't really care, because whoever makes it, whatever things you all design and build, is going to break. And then I'm going to show up. That's what Geek Squad is. It works anywhere. And there are geeks everywhere, as evidenced by this conference. Now, in America, we call it ramen. In Japan, they call it ramen. In the UK, they call it cup noodle. Do you recognize this? Yes. I lived on this for 5 years in college. There's probably more plastic in the noodles than there is in the packaging. This is the international symbol for struggle. Okay? Because I didn't know it at the time. But the best thing ever to happen to me is I had no money when I started my company. Because if I had money, I would have paid somebody else to design a logo. I would have paid somebody else to do marketing. That's the topic of my speech. Marketing is a tax you pay for being unremarkable. I'm absolutely opposed against advertising in any paid form. Apple does not pay any money to have their computers appear on TV. Do you ever see the Apple logo on TV or in the movies? They don't pay for that. That's the goal. If you have to pay for it, then like you've already done something wrong. Kind of like if you design a product, and if any of you are going to do hardware startups, if you include a manual or you have to, then you've already failed at design. Have you seen the little manual that comes with the iPhone? Yeah, because there isn't one. You just touch it. So, an alternative view I'm going to offer is, because I never raised any money. I don't even know what a Series A is or a B. Does that have something to do with the Italian driver's license? Okay. So, but I learned a number of things in the beginning that later, when I did have resources and I did have money, I was a much better consumer of them. I'm not opposed to doing advertising if you have to. But if you go without things, then I think you become more creative. Twitter is proof of this. Who would have predicted 20 years ago, if we had this conference 20 years ago and I said, here's my idea. Check it out. It's going to be a $10 billion business. It's a service that limits you to 140 characters of text. Who wants to invest? And I'm going to call it Twitter. And the individual things are called tweets. Nobody would have invested in this. Nobody. Hell, if I had told you I was going to do something called Google 20 years ago and call it Google, most experts would have said, oh, nobody will take you seriously with a name like that. They even misspelled Google as a term. So it doesn't matter what you call a company. It just matters how you do it. So, I did a Google of Italian culture. Now this is biased by probably some American programmer. This is on the US Google site. This is probably painful for you to see. Go, oh God, really? Hey, not me. Blame Google. All right? But every company, when you build a company, you're also going to build a culture. And I want to talk about all the little details that I thought about, that I had to solve, and I solved them without having money. And I'm going to take you through that, because no matter what you build, no matter where you are, if you fail at your startup and you go back to a big company or you work for somebody else, you're part of a culture. And it's important to understand how culture is essential. And the other thing I'm going to say is I'm not interested in... It must be great to build a company in a year and then sell it and make a lot of money and then do something else. I would love to do that. I suck at that. When I don't know how to do something without being in love with it. And so Geek Squad, I didn't think I'd do it for 18 years, but when I started, I was willing to do it for that long. So I'm also speaking to some of the people that might be watching this or sitting in this room who I don't want to take money from people because I don't like having that kind of pressure. Somebody looking over my shoulder. Hey, did you make money yet? Did you make money yet? Did you make money yet? I don't know. So that's why I love to see the things where founders just start solving a problem without even knowing why. Each of you is driven by a way of doing things, and that is the key to your own success. So, as an American, well, let me get to that. I did the French culture. This is just Google. I did not put these images up. I just typed in the raw thing and clicked on the image search. And I did the American one. Now, the difference that I see as an American, we have like very little history. I just spent the last week and a half from Dublin, and then I rented an old Jaguar, and I drove through Burgundy looking at castles. We have like no castles in the U.S., not ones that are real, and the ones we have, we copied off of you. We have very little history, only a couple hundred years. That's like a brand new building in Italy. Now, this is where I love the exchanges, because there are things about America that you can see that I can't see because I'm in it. But let me tell you, I'm absolutely inspired by Europe. I mean, it's like an adult theme park, because you can drive from one end of Europe to the other in like a couple days. And there's such distinct cultures, and I want to partly reflect back to you on what I see, and something no matter what you build, there's certain things I recommend you embrace and you use it. Yes, there are stereotypes, but they can be useful, and I'll explain how. But you have a much more, each European country has a distinct culture. In America, look at this mess. This is the first page. This is horrible. Even the toilets in Europe are more beautiful. I don't know what it is. And especially, I will tell you, I don't mean to stereotype, but this is all a compliment, but the Italians have a relationship of beauty that is unparalleled. And it should be part of whatever startup you do. And you have all of this. So not only do you get to use the same technology, that's the other interesting thing, is that the cultures change, the habits change. But with technology, it's the same in every single country. A transistor is a transistor. A touch screen is a touch screen. But how Italian startups and French startups and American startups interpret the branding and the culture and the technology will be different. And so I expect things to be distinct. And I think that's going to be key, because there's 270,000 apps on the App Store. So you're probably going to hear almost all startups these days are apps. And like, what else? And no matter what you build, differentiation is key, because most startups don't have the money to do big advertising campaigns. And I think a lot of people would argue with social media, advertising's kind of dead. Do you really look at all those stupid little banner ads, especially in the mobile? That's why Facebook's having so much trouble. So thinking about what makes you special and unique, and starting with where you come from. That's the other promise. I was talking to one of the companies that's going to present today. He lived overseas in the U.S., worked for Nokia, now moved back to southern Italy. You know, that's my dream, is to move back to southern Italy and do my startup there or wherever. I lived in Chicago, okay? It's nice there. My father used to say, if you want to get something done fast, you go to New York. If you want to get something done weird, you go to L.A. You want to get something done right, you go to Chicago. And then I moved to Minnesota, which is like the Russia of America. It is a great place to hire programmers because there's nothing to do. And the Russians are the greatest physicists and poets in the world. Do you know why? It's cold in Russia. Very productive people they are. The only reason Silicon Valley works, by the way, is because those geeks don't know it's nice outside. And with technology, you really can live anywhere. And let me tell you what, if I could live anywhere, I'd live around here. So we lack a certain amount of culture. We lack a certain amount of identity. Now, I understand there's a bit of frontier spirit. And because we don't have a tradition, we can break rules maybe easier. But at the same time, you have your strength that I want to share with you what I see. So I'll walk you through it. So I went on Wikipedia, and I looked up the world's oldest companies. You're in the list. You have a lot of companies. This is the oldest company in Italy. Raise your hand if you've ever heard of this company. Well, shame on you. This company started 1,000 years ago. In the year 1000. So when you hear about like 2-year exits and 5-year exits, I find that completely boring. Because let's talk about the exit. I wish somebody, and I don't have time to do it, Well, I guess I am because I'm technically unemployed right now. But I would love someone to do a study of acquisitions like 5 years later. I started a business 18 years ago. I sold it 10 years ago this year. I left because, frankly, 10 is like the record for a founder to stick around. And 10 years later, it's considered more valuable than the company that acquired it. Almost all my original employees, of which I had 60, almost all of them are still there, buying homes, paying for college, having families, all paid for by the big company. And it's still operating. How many times do we read about acquisitions and then they just kill the product? And the people go off and somebody made money. But to me, that's not how it works. The company that bought the company 10 years later should still feel like, I would buy it again. It's a good deal. I don't read about that enough. Maybe your longer term view will actually bring a little fresh perspective. I'm not too enamored with this quick exit stuff. I don't think it's sustainable long term. So again, in America, our country's less than 300 years old. This company's 3 times older than that. They make bells. They're a foundry. Barovier and Tosa, I don't even know how to pronounce that, but it's like 700 years old. And this is the oldest winemaker in Italy in the year like 1350. Now, that's going to be, like, I've always told people, what am I going to do next? I'm either going to build a company that couldn't exist before, but the other thing I'd love to do is buy brands that are neglected or dormant, that have a long history, and then rejuvenate them with technology. Because the great thing about technology now, and I'm really interested in offline businesses, not just digital on the internet for the internet's sake, but what we're witnessing right now is the internet has been entirely abstract and locked on the internet for the last 20 years. But now with mobile phones, sensors, touch technology, gesture technology, the internet is going to punch its way into the physical world. Most businesses in the world still don't take credit cards, don't have any kind of digital, no reservation system. You can't, in the future, I think it will be the norm to schedule a haircut, your landscaping, repairs of any kind on your roof, all on your mobile phone. Almost all businesses are offline right now. That's the big opportunity. So I wonder how many businesses have been around for 200, 300, 400, 500 years that are either dead or dormant. I would love to bring a few of them back to life. I could spend a lifetime in Italy scouring through the archives and look at the design, because you don't just build logos in this country. You have family crests. Like, we don't do that in the U.S. I love this because this teaches you how, when you found your company, how to design a logo. Every color should have some meaning. Isn't this what Steve Jobs did? He sweat every detail. He didn't wake up in the morning competing with Samsung. He didn't go, oh, I wonder what they're going to do today. No, he knows that Apple competes with Apple. And you really compete with yourselves. You compete with what is possible. So this is the coat of arms of the previous, he was the creator of Chianti, Baron Ricasoli. I don't even know what that stuff means. I didn't have time to look it up. Like I said, I was up till 2 a.m. riding my bike around Milan. But everything means something. Well, that's something that I recommend for you, because the first thing you do is you create your own language. When you create the words, even what the words of your company will sound like when it's spoken. Those kind of details matter. So when I said, oh yeah, this is the first page of the world's oldest companies. Japan's got everybody beat. But you're on there. You're in like the top 15, the Marinelli Bell Foundry. And if you go on like page 2, 3, 4, I mean, you've got several companies older than like 400 or 500 years. That's amazing. So I want all of you to think on a 500-year business plan. Like I said, I don't know what kind of technology will exist in 500 years, but that shit will break and Geek Squad will be around. So when you think on a long term, you have to think on what are called archetypes. Archetypes are themes that recur throughout history. So when you read great literature, man versus man, man versus nature, man versus himself, that's what I love about reading history. History is very humbling, and sometimes America is arrogant because we don't have a lot of history. So I'm sure sometimes Italians and others, roll their eyes at America going, oh, brother, just wait. It's like when you're a parent and you look at your children, it's like, oh, just wait until you learn how things really work. Having a sense of history helps you plan for the long term. It helps give you patience to do the right thing. So in America, we're all, everybody's worried that our Congress is dysfunctional, and we're at our most divisive time in history. No. Congress has always been dysfunctional in the U.S. They've never gotten along. And some people think we're living the most violent time in human history, that there are more wars. No, we're living in the most peaceful time, and the more history you read. So I think this helps a lot with strategy. So anyway, when I started, I was the call center, I was the driver, I was the operator, I was the repairman, I did everything. And when you do everything in a company, that's when you're most integrated. And I didn't want to stay in the repair business. It's not very sexy. But I learned that there's two kinds of businesses. I wanted to get into web programming. That's what everybody was doing 20 years ago. But that's what everybody wants to do. This is another concept of just thinking differently, because how many startups all look the same right now? They're like a herd of cattle. Versus, what are ways you can apply technology that nobody's doing? Nobody want to make house calls. And I only did this because it was cheap and easy to get into. And then I learned that every business is interesting once you peel away. While the repair business of making house calls, it's sticky and messy. I have to dress nice. Most programmers like to just wear jeans and t-shirts. I can't do that when I'm showing up at your home. I've got to show up on time. I can't smell bad. And then I've got to fix the problem, and then I've got to go to the next house call. But after a while, it became really interesting. Like, are there more efficient ways to make money and increase quality, get there faster? And I back then, if I wanted to take credit card payments in 1995, 1998, you couldn't take credit card payments on your cell phone. We're only just now be able to do that. So I had to write software to do what you couldn't do at the time. How do I print your receipt? I looked at all these mobile gadgets. They were expensive, and you have to keep the batteries charged. Now I have to have 3 chargers on me. Then I started printing invoices on your printer in your home. So now I don't need that gear. And again, every time I ran into a roadblock, there was always this really fun, creative way to kind of hack the system. So I think some of the most interesting things that will be coming out are where this technology is applied, not to internet businesses necessarily, but physical. So my vision was like, what's my target market? Anybody who owns or uses a computer. Who's that? Everybody. What's the future of technology? Everywhere. In fact, I kind of need to build a global network because I don't know where you will be when it fails. So from the very beginning, I had a vision, kind of like to be the McDonald's of computer support. Wherever you are in the world, you'll have a consistent experience, you'll know what it is, and we'll be there to help you. So from the very beginning, I had the vision. But I had never designed a logo before. So I looked in our short history in the U.S. of logos. So I'm going to kind of take you through just a couple of the stories of where the ideas came from. These are some very well-known logos in the U.S. Tide is a laundry detergent. The logo hasn't changed in like 90 years, which is a really, really, really long time in the U.S. But the other thing I notice is, what do the old logos have in common? They're very basic colors because they didn't have Photoshop back then. And if they did, do you ever notice when people use Photoshop too much? They click every damn button and they have too many special effects going on. It was the limitation of the printing technology that forced people to keep things simple. I think Twitter teaches us that lesson again. And once you start looking for that, you see it everywhere. This is an ad from like 70 years ago. The ad is obviously very dated, but the logo hasn't really changed at all. This is Apple's logo. That was actually their original logo, over 30 years ago. It was Isaac Newton sitting under the apple tree. But then, I know when Steve Jobs stepped in on logo design. You can just tell. And then what happened after that? They took out all the color. They went to, in the 90s, it was kind of silverish blue, and now they've taken all the color out. That's also what great brands do. They know what they stand for, and they distill down to their essential idea. Who are you and what do you stand for? It makes it easier for storytelling. It actually makes the marketing easier. It makes it easier for the consumer because your brand and your logo and your whole story is a user interface. And the best apps that you're starting to spend time with are the ones that are simple and you get them and they're easy to communicate. And you see this over and over again. This is a Minnesota company. You maybe recognize 3M, a very well-known innovation company. It stood for Minnesota Mining and Manufacturing. Then there's their logo in the 1930s. Then there's the Sputnik space era, the 1960s. Everything's all angles and science and geometry. And then they invented Helvetica. And we get but the goal is to distill down. I want you to think about your businesses and boiling it down, reducing it and reducing it and reducing it. It will make it easier to hire people because once you know who you are, it makes it very easy to know who to hire and who not to hire. So, this is the AOL start page. Look at this noisy crap. I bet this was designed by people with MBAs, college degrees. And after they got fired, they went to Yahoo. Because I can't tell the difference. This is how most companies look. Can't tell the difference. But then, Google. And by the way, now that Marissa Mayer of Google is CEO of Yahoo, take a guess which way Yahoo's going. But here's the story most people don't know. When Sergey Brin and Larry Page started Google, they were computer nerds. They were database programmers. They didn't know anything about HTML. They just threw up a search box. It was the lack of expertise that led to the Google design. It was an accident. Again, this idea of constraint. The constraints you have now as entrepreneurs will be essential as your company scales. Because the next challenge you will have as your company grows is how, I heard a phrase recently and I absolutely agree with it. Culture is what happens when the leaders are out of the room. And if you want your company to grow and you want time with your families to enjoy life, the company needs to run even better when you're not there. That's what culture is. So from the very beginning, you will plant those seeds. You will determine whether the organization is curious, ethical, and driven. So it's important to think about this up front. But the other lesson I'm trying to teach here is that every problem you will ever face in business has already been solved. Several times over. That's why I love history. Whenever I feel insecure or how the hell will I ever come up with another idea, I just read history about the great minds. Think of all the great figures in your country's history. You have such a rich literature to draw upon. And then when you read life stories of people, you can see how they went on the journey, give you strength. But also, Picasso said good artists copy and great artists steal. And I'm absolutely encouraging theft of ideas. But there's only one caveat there. If you're in the food business and you really want to innovate, do not look in the food industry for ideas. What I think Picasso meant is the difference between stealing and copying is looking in your own area that you're comfortable with, that you understand. The key is to take ideas from other industries. I borrowed more inspiration from hotels and restaurants, very intimate experiences, to use into my in-home technology business. And I'll go through a couple other examples. That's the key. If you want to innovate, one very simple, easy way, beyond being constraining yourself, is to look in other industries. It's like having a metal detector. If you're looking for a certain algorithm or equation or efficiency model or pricing idea or even just wording of something, look for other places outside of your comfort zone and outside of your own industry or vertical or category for others who have done. I guarantee you'll find it. Because if you know you're looking for silver instead of bronze, the tone on the metal detector will be much easier to hear. So when I started, I just sketched out the idea, and I needed to do a couple things. I needed to say it in 2 words or less, 2 syllables. How do I say in as few words as possible everything I stand for? It's really about the person, because it's a people service that we offer. What kind of a person? You know? Not a nerd. Let's see, do I have my, I don't have my Venn diagram. You know the difference between a nerd and a geek? A nerd doesn't know they're a nerd. Okay? A geek just doesn't care. So, the other thing is, I use geek specifically because a new archetype was born 20 years ago. When a geek became the world's richest person, that changed society. People began to look at math and science a little differently. Now it's not just about unpopular people. Geeks rule the world now. But geeks don't care about power. The only power geeks care about is longer battery life. But it's also not just about the person, but it's about the team. When you buy into a company, you're really buying into the network of what the company can do for you. And I wanted a word, squad is a very potent word. We could have used the word team, but I think a baseball team. You know, I could have used group, but I think of like group hug. But in the U.S., the only time you ever hear the word squad are usually bomb squad or police squad. So I wanted that sense of urgency, because it's really like people are calling me in a computer emergency. It's just like calling the police, you know, because I show up. Hello, ma'am, I'm here to fix your computer. It's over there, that piece of shit, I'm going to throw it out the window. Sound familiar? So I'm trying to somehow distill that essence in the logo. We are the ones you want. We are a group of people that do not sleep, we do not date. This is all we do. We're waiting for your call. When your car breaks down, you want a car geek, right? You want somebody so obsessed with cars, you know. If you have a bug in your house, you want somebody obsessed with insects. Not creepy, just short of that. Here's another problem. Now in my business, I have to travel. I have to come to you, wherever you are in the world. And this is another metaphor. Because as you start up, or the companies you're already in, we're all just cars on the freeway. And we pass each other on the freeway all the time. But you don't know it, because everybody's driving the same damn car. Be careful. Everything you choose, from the colors. The Italians teach us a lot about fashion. I mean, I just love walking around Milano, looking at just the little details. There's a gentleman walking in this morning, he had an ascot. Nobody wears an ascot in the U.S. It works here. And your shoes, you're in love with shoes. People tell me that people that don't have a lot of money in Italy will only have one pair of shoes in their closet, but they'll be Salvatore Ferragamos. Right? And that actually is cheaper because they will last a long time. That's something I think the Italians know better than the Americans. So I'm deathly afraid of entering the marketplace and being just another piece of cattle on the pasture. And you look around and this is what you get. What in the hell are these people thinking? As far as I can tell, they got ripped off by the decal man who's like, let's cram as much crap on the side. But like my business card, like the Google Start page, do you really need anything on the side of a car anymore? And if I may be so bold, wouldn't an Italian say, oh, but the logo is so beautiful. We didn't want to pollute the rest of the car and the aesthetic. So if I'm going to steal an idea, what do the billion-dollar companies do? This. FedEx used to be called Federal Express. They tweeted their logo. They cut it down to 5 characters and fit an arrow inside the logo. But UPS went even better. They're just a color. They don't even use language anymore. They're brown. The trucks are brown. The boxes are brown. The uniforms are brown. And in the US, I don't know what the slogan is here, their advertising just says, what can brown do for you? They don't even call themselves UPS anymore. It's brilliant. Is it legal to trademark a color? Does anybody own red in Italy? They own brown everywhere. That is distilling it down to the essence. And any of us can do that. You do not have to be a billion-dollar company. Now, in the U.S., when I grew up with a car in my life that when I was a kid, every kid wanted this car. And that's the Batmobile. This is the greatest corporate. And what does this teach us about branding? Do you see Batman's phone number on the side of the car? Do you see his domain name? Do not put domain names on a car, or an address, or a fax number. No, Batman is like, I'll find you, all right? I'll know when you're in trouble. And by the way, that's only a half-serious joke, you know? Instead of waiting for the customers to call you, how can you detect when the customers need you and find them? That's the problem with psychics. They're always advertising. Shouldn't they be calling me? When you take an idea from left field, what are the odds your competitors, and you will have competitors if you're in a growth area or you have a good idea, other people will come. I was so afraid of competition. I don't like competition. I'm a scaredy cat. So I want to design it to make it extremely hard to copy. I learned from Italian history. Most Italian villages were designed to completely confuse invaders because all the streets are a nightmare, and I love it. It's actually quite incredible, ingenious design. An invading army cannot overtake any of these villages. How can you be the same when people try to invade your turf? It's hard enough hiring people and making money and making payroll. To have to worry about somebody else trying to steal your lunch when you're asleep, that depresses the hell out of me. So I found this. I started with this, saw this, which led me to this, and then I set my metal detector. I'm looking for a car that's unique, that will stand out on the freeway. Now, I grew up in the 70s, and American car design died in the 70s with the oil crisis. But I draw incredible inspiration from 1955 to 1961 European cars. Pininfarina, the Sunbeam Alpine, the Simca, 1958 Simca Aronde, made in Nanterre, just outside of Paris. Like the French, no seatbelts, 7 ashtrays. Now you drive this around, and I started driving around town. No phone number, no website, because your computer might not be broken. I just want you to just recognize me on the street. And people used to say, I see your cars everywhere, and I only had one. That began to teach me how people's memory works. You can trick them. So I started buying more and more old cars. Renault Dauphine, 1963, worst car ever built. Another French car. And then in 1953, the idea is that there are things you have to do. Most of you probably won't have physical service businesses, okay? You might not need cars. The idea is that whatever you have, even your business card, the paper it's on, the ink you use, the sounds that come from your mouth when you say your company's name should sound beautiful to you. And the cars, let's keep going. Then here's my problem. I love old cars. For a while it became Geek Squad Antique Auto Repair. So I need some way to visually unify it. It's great to be different, but at some point you need something that's scalable. So I'm watching American television, and I see this. Do you recognize this? Yes. Blues Brothers, even better. Nice. See? These things, when you have an archetype, they can kind of be like a virus that travels. Do you watch Law and Order here in Italy? Because it's like on everywhere on reruns. Well, in the U.S., we call this the black and white. It's the police car. And all police cars in the U.S., for almost always, were black and white. There are things in a culture that everybody understands that you can steal and use. I'm like the police. And when you see me on the street, I want to remind you that I'm like the police, but for your computer. So, and I also need some cheap visual way to have different cars, but one look. So I saw this and I was like, that's it. And then, as luck would have it, Volkswagen, so I went and bought one, and I did this. And I looked at it and I'm like, oh, bellissimo. So then, Volkswagen, it looks great on here too. It works anywhere now. Now I can buy any car and have one visual identity. This is in London. with the little smart cars. And they told me, well, in Europe, they don't know what the black and white is. I'm like, not yet. My prediction, all the police will begin to copy me now. In a reverse. When we went to China, they said there's no word for geek in Mandarin. I'm like, first of all, that's impossible. Chinese philosophers, Sun Tzu, Lao Tzu, they were geeks. Italian monks, geeks. Men living alone for long periods of time. Instead of coding, they were copying manuscripts. Geek culture goes back to the beginning of history. Uniforms. Let's get to some fashion here, huh? In America, I would like to apologize for our lack of listening to you, learning from you, because we were this thing called a polo shirt in America. And I would like to apologize specifically for that, because it is ugly and does not belong in fashion. And every company had taken all the colors in the United States. So what was I going to do? T-shirts and jeans? But then I watched Apollo 13, NASA. And I'm watching the movie and I'm like, they're wearing a uniform. And if you notice, geeks don't think about what they wear. They just start copying each other unconsciously. And they're wearing ties, so it looks nice. Nobody in America wears ties anymore. Again, I apologize. It's wrong. But when nobody else does it anymore, that's the key. I handwrite. I have my own letterhead. My little cards you saw, I beautifully printed 1880s letterpress, beautiful paper, because a handwritten note to an employee has 100 times the impact of a text message or an email. So in this era of digital communication, sometimes going old school is a great, easy way to stand out. So I saw a way to visually unite it. Low, short sleeve shirts. Italians probably wouldn't agree, but I've got a compromise here, okay? I need the ventilation, okay? Geeks, hygiene. And it's low cost. They can wash it at home. They can iron it. No dry cleaning needed. The problem is the tie. So we use clip-on ties. Did the police here wear clip-on ties? No, not in Italy. I apologize for even asking. In America, the police wear clip-on ties. Do you know why? So they don't get choked. Same reason we wear them. And thus, it's complete. The uniform will never go out of style because it's never been in style. So sometimes when you have no style, you last forever. I've been in a lot of newspapers and a lot of television, but I'm most proud to tell you that my most proud phone call I ever got from the press was from the Los Angeles Times fashion director. She was writing a story on why Americans don't dress nicely anymore. And she in the workplace, because in America they dress down and much more casual. And she said, "You're the only company that's wearing ties anymore." And I was like, thank you. At least one person noticed. But there's a serious reason. It's low cost. It looks different. Looks nice. And after a while, if you keep doing it over and over and over, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, then after a while, it works. I won't talk too much about Best Buy, about going into a big company, other than just to say that, well, there's not much to say. I was there 10 years. I went there because I'm a contrarian. Most founders don't last. They get kicked out within a year. Why? Does it seem like most small companies? Have you seen companies in Italy that were small and they grow and then they kind of lose their magic? Why does that happen? Does it have to happen? I don't want to just stay small. I need to take this all over the world. The logo is beautiful. The uniforms look great. I want to do it everywhere. So I need help. So I go to a big company. And I wanted to find out, am I any different? And startups are agile and they're nimble and they can innovate, but they lack leverage. They don't have a lot of power. Big companies like Best Buy, the world's largest consumer electronics retailer, have a lot of power. What if you combine the magic of innovation in a small company and a large company? to maybe influence Microsoft and Sony and the whole electronics industry. What I can tell you is that, in short, I didn't really learn anything. That the big companies don't know anything. That's the good news for you. The big companies are not that smart. They don't know anything more than you know. And the only reason I left is because there's a certain point at which I couldn't do anything unless I was the CEO. So I did my best to work within there. I lasted 10 years, longer than most founders last, and now I'm dangerous. I'm 43, so on your graph of founders, I think there's another type of founder. My daughter will graduate and go to college in 4 years. In 4 years, I will have no children anymore. I will be able to go back to working 20-hour days, non-stop, traveling the world. I'll be able to have my base probably in Italy, in the Mediterranean. As long as I have internet access, it's all you really need. So I also think that people living longer, I call it the silver generation. You know, one thing that did help me when I started is young founders are great because they don't know anything. They ask questions older people wouldn't. But now imagine if young founders hung out with people who are living longer, who are over 40 and over 50, who have a lot of wisdom. You can be born smart, but you can't be born wise. So I also predict a lot of startups in the future by people older than 50. That's what I plan on doing. And I'm going to be dangerous because I've done both, small and large. Oh, that's it. How are we doing on time? Good? Thank you very much.